Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Gold Mine. We have another fantastic show for you today. We got Satch joining us. It's been a while, dude, and I am excited to get this started. We're going to be talking about ideas. And before we even get to that, we got to hit this idea. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit your notification bell, get all your emails whenever we go live, which, of course, Wednesdays for the Gold Mine and Fridays for the Collective. So let's get right into the intro right away. Satch, hit us up, 10, 15 seconds. Where are you, where you come from? All that good stuff.
I'm in the lower mainland of BC, Vancouver area, retired law enforcement officer, 18 years, ultra-endurance athlete, mental health advocate, and just all-around good guy.
I like it. The humility is right there. Shaun, how's the mountains treating you?
It's treating me well. It's going to be a good conversation. Not sure where we're going to go with this one. I saw real quick that I believe the topic is ideas.
Yes,
So
indeed.
let's see what happens.
All right. Well, I got some good videos for us to get us kicked off, get our minds working right. And right off the bat, we're going to be thinking more about the ideas of who we are right off the bat. So let's kick this off. Here we go.
Most people pretend to be something that they're not because they're afraid of being rejected. There's a good chance that you pretend to be something that you're not because you're afraid of being rejected. See, we're taught in our life to fall in line. We're given rewards when we do good things, and we're given discipline when we do bad things. And we want the reward, so we fall in line. See, a lot of times we create personas, we date people, we do things, we take jobs. We do this stuff that we think people are going to praise us for. Oftentimes, the things that we do are not even things that we ourselves want to do. We just do them because we think that we're supposed to. We act a certain way because we think that we're supposed to. We behave a certain way because we think that we're supposed to. We just want the reward. We just want to be a good boy. Well, what does it really mean to be you?
Bam. Let's talk about it. Satch?
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense, right? I understand what he's trying to say. I think it's super important to know who you are and understand what kind of person you are so that you can present yourself authentically as he's trying to suggest that we should do. So, yeah, I kind of agree. Not sure how the vibe of that, but, it was okay.
Yeah, the music puts it off to the side a little bit in a different realm here. Shaun, what do you got?
Well, I agree with generally the spirit of what he was trying to put across, though I think it could have been put across a bit better. I will say this, though. So if the message is a lot of people out there don't know what they're supposed to be or who they are, okay. Yeah, there's a lot of that. So you're doing something that isn't true to who you are. Okay, that's better than doing nothing, because along the way you'll figure it out. And just before we came into the show, I was chatting back and forth with ChatGPT about this very idea of how the phrase is talk is cheap. And so a lot of the ideas that are bounced around out there, because there's no cost to them, there's no consequence to them, a lot of things don't get done because the individual who has the ideas never executes on them because they don't understand how short life is, or they don't understand how much they can provide to their fellow man, or they don't understand a lot of the factors involved that would help them cross the start line of action. And so I'd rather someone cross the start line wrong than not cross the start line at all. Because when you get across the start line, if you've got the right people around you, eventually they'll square you up. They'll get you on the right trajectory of action. But it's for all of us to take that first step. And so there's a lot of people who talk about wanting to be a good boy, or I'm not a good boy, using his words. But the talk does literally nothing except move you backwards. It's the action that moves you forward. So that's what I would like to focus on in his video.
Yeah, I agree. When I watched it initially, I was thinking about, the ideas that we have of ourselves, in that I think I'm like this, but until you actually put that into action, until you do anything about it. So, I think I'm a good fighter. I would definitely be a good fighter up until you do your first day of jujitsu, or you do your first day of karate, or you step inside a ring, or you get mugged on the side of the street. Until that idea is challenged, you really have no way to gauge it. Satch, you got anything else on this?
It makes a lot of sense, man. I think a lot of people have a lot of ideas and think a lot of things without actually testing themselves to see if they are those things. So I think super important, if you have an idea of who you are, try to take some action to see if you're actually that person. And if you're not, then if you want to be that person, if you have an idea of being that person, then take steps to be that person.
I like it. Shaun, anything to add on to that?
Just the key word that the individual in the video mentioned, that was discipline. I believe he was trying to make a comparison between discipline and sort of like what society wants you to be. And so the what you want to be and what society wants you to be, that's a different conversation than discipline. Discipline will get you somewhere rather than where you're at. And so the key to me is in his video is it's not that he was dismissive of discipline. He just kind of second placed it to, well, everyone else thinks of you as ... or you think of yourself as ... Forget about the thoughts. Go freaking do. And through do, the discipline of do, the consistency of do, you'll figure the rest out.
I'm there's not a lot of places we can go with that one. Unless you got anything else, Satch, I can move on to the next. What do you got?
I'm going to jump in real quick on that because Sean mentioned discipline in the video. It almost sounded like the guy was talking about discipline like a punishment. And it was like a negative. That's the vibe I got off of it with the way he was saying it, right? And maybe that's what kind of put me off to the video, because I don't look at discipline as a punishment. It's a tool that helps us take action and do the things that we have in our head as the ideas. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that piece. I don't think discipline's a punishment, man. It's a tool that we need to have.
Yeah,
I took it the same way, and that was the thing that threw me off. And I can understand why the individual was using it as such, because in the Marine Corps, when you first get into the United States Marines, there's a process where you get to understand what discipline means. And discipline in the Marine Corps is different than before you were in the Marine Corps. And discipline usually has the connotation of a punishment. And certainly that's a large phase of the initial training of any military, certainly any hardcore military organization, is discipline is punishment. You have your self-discipline, of course, but then you have your group discipline, and that is often punishment based. And so I can understand why he was using it the way he was using it, just simply because his construct, his own internal voice of what discipline means to him, is a little more narrow than I think it needed to be.
I'm wondering then, perhaps, do you think that the idea itself of discipline becomes something that you would have to test in multiple ways in order to find what works for you? We were on the mats earlier today, and I was rolling with some of the guys, and I was like, what we should be searching for is like new ways to engage in a certain area that you already know. So do you think that perhaps the idea itself of discipline needs to be kind of played with to figure out what works for you, perhaps? Satch, what do you think?
It's a good question. I think there might be some truth to that. I think applying discipline in different ways throughout your life, in not the generic or the typical way that someone might consider discipline, I think it's important to kind of explore, right? Because I think you can apply discipline in ways that you might actually enjoy and you might actually take value in and grow through. So I think, yeah, I think applying discipline in all capacities, in whichever way, and that requires starting to think about it and playing with it to start.
I like it. Shaun, what are you thinking?
Just before we came into this podcast, when I was in the Zoom meeting with Satch, we were talking about a bunch of things, and a word that I use pretty regularly anytime I talk to someone is pattern interrupt. Pattern interrupt the conversation, pattern interrupt your life, pattern interrupt your discipline, your routine, the way you do things, how you think about things, pattern interrupt. And so discipline is often defined as doing something consistently at a level that is appropriate at the time to create an outcome, et cetera, et cetera. We can define it in several different ways, but having the discipline to break your discipline is discipline. And so the pattern interrupt of the moment is more important to me. The thoughtfulness of what you're trying to accomplish is more important to me than the dogmatic application of very, very narrow-minded or blinkers-oriented thought of discipline. I'd rather someone be undisciplined to learn more about discipline than just simply taking a one-dimensional understanding of discipline and thinking that you've got it locked down. So the idea of discipline itself is many-layered and is much broader than I think most people understand. And to really get it, you have to explore it. You just don't accept it at face value as a simple definition and think that I've got this nailed.
Yeah, this is it's such an interesting kind of back and forth in the fact that like we require action in order to understand whatever it is we're trying to do, but also we have to delve into the idea of it through the action, and it just kind of feeds back into itself. I think that's fascinating. Now, I got a couple comments here I just want to hit on real quick. Lisa jumped in here earlier. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll have to watch on replay. See you at the beginning. Absolutely. We'll see you later. Salty James, good day all. Good to see you back on. Satch, good to see you, Salty. Now I got another video, unless you guys got any other thoughts on this before we move on. Good to go. All right, let's jump into this one.
Have the best idea in the history of all mankind in your head. And if you don't open up your computer and put words into the word processing machine, it doesn't matter. That idea doesn't matter at all. Doesn't matter. There's probably thousands and thousands of people with thousands of brilliant ideas that they don't have the discipline to make that idea come to fruition. If you don't have that kind of discipline to make that happen, your ideas are worthless.
If you don't have the discipline, your ideas are worthless. What do you think, Satch?
Discipline equals freedom. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, man. I agree with that 100%. Everyone's got ideas. I mean, I hear them all the time myself. I've had tons of different ideas, but never had the discipline to execute against them. So they didn't mean much. But when you have an idea and you couple that with a little bit of discipline, a little bit of understanding, a little bit of knowledge, well, then you can start making that a reality in real time. And I think Jocko's head on, man. I agree.
Bam. I like it. Shaun, thoughts?
I do appreciate how Jocko did this. The word processing machine, like he was some sort of Neanderthal.
I thought the same. It was awesome.
Wow. So, yeah. Ideas, the good idea fairy, the person who has got all the thoughts but non-action. It not only is it not helpful sometimes it really super sucks. When you've got someone standing next to you with all the ideas but not an ounce of conviction. Those are two radically different things. Ideas and conviction, ideas and action, ideas and sweat equity. Ideas are free, just like words. But sweat is not free. And therein lies the disconnect for a lot of idea fairies. Over the course of the podcast, this one that we're on right now, since we've started, I've heard countless ideas. I was going to say countless good ideas, but I've heard countless ideas, countless directions that we should have gone. And here we are today, having made some choices that got us here. And my thought on this very subject is that um, no one's really got it figured out. No one can have all of the discipline in the world and realize that just as long as I've got all the discipline, all of the outcomes are going to show up the way I like them, because that's not how it plays out. You can have mega discipline and accomplish almost nothing in life. With some lucky breaks, you might accomplish some things. With some help, you might accomplish some things. But it's not common that if you've got loads of conviction and loads of discipline, but you want to do it all by yourself, it's not often that it plays out the way you hope it will. And so discipline is a subset, I feel, of the solution. We'll call it the outcome. And that outcome requires many things. I've listed at least one of them, and that is having a supportive team around you that's squared away. Well, bam, there's one. And I'm not going to list a bunch more, but the fact remains that as we're isolating out a single word like discipline, it doesn't mean that discipline is the key to the universe. There's many keys to the universe that you've kind of got to pull together to get the big outcomes that you want.
It's interesting that you bring up keys, and it brought up an image from a book that I read many years ago. There's basically a hallway of doors, and it's like the way through the universe. It's kind of a shortcut thing. And in order to open every one of those doors, that you need a key in order to do it. And I think, to your point, Shaun, discipline is one of those keys. It opens up a door within the universe to kind of explore a certain area, just like everything else does. You can move from door to door to door to door and slowly learn more, but I don't think you'll ever learn it all. Satch, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think discipline's a way of living and a lifestyle, perhaps, and not getting up early at 5:30 in the morning every single day. I mean, okay, cool. That's maybe the typical idea of someone thinking about what discipline might be. But to Sean's point, there are many aspects to discipline, and then also in order of executing against an idea. So, for example, in my case, I came up with an idea 4 years ago to do something to run across Canada and all these different things. But if I was an individual by myself with discipline, getting up every single morning just to do some training and running, likely wouldn't happen. It likely wouldn't happen. And, we'll see how it turns out next year. But I think with the tools that I've put in place, I'm a disciplined individual. I have a good team around me. I constantly reflect on how I'm doing things, which is a discipline in and itself, to be able to question myself constantly so that I can do things better. It allows for things to progress in a way that's organic, and I don't know what the outcome is. Like Shaun was mentioning, we don't know how things will turn out, but things continue to move in a direction. And that's the ultimate goal, I think, when you're trying to come up with an idea and trying to execute against an idea. As long as it keeps moving forward and the ultimate goal is achieved at some point, I think that's what the goal should be.
I like this. You and I were chatting about this earlier before we went live here, was the fact that there's the added aspect of whether or not people looking around to make sure that things are happening either the way you think they were or how they're actually ending up, like what the outcome is to begin with. Is you will, I'm going to try running, and then you break your leg first day out, and you're like, well, that was not the outcome I thought it was going to be. And then you have to be able to reassess and think about, do I either want to keep going? Do I even want to keep doing this? Or should I move on to another idea, et cetera, et cetera? I think it's a really interesting spot. Shaun, you got any additional thoughts?
I do. So the way you framed things up reminds me of the scene out of The Matrix where they're stepping into the hallway and it's a pile of doors going both directions. And Neo is like about to go through that door. And so to get into that moment, there's a few things going on. If it was only discipline that got them into the hallway, and it was only discipline that put that key in the lock to see what was on the other side of the door, then discipline will only have you opening a fixed amount of doors. We'll call it X. So you'll do X amount of doors until, guess what? Now you're freaking bored. So now you've got discipline with a requirement of curiosity. And so I can stack a bunch of words here. I can stack another 10 words. This is required, this is required, this is required, this is required to stay in the long game. Because the short game's easy. You can be disciplined and curious for about a day and a half. Then you don't have to be. And then what? Well, now you're not curious anymore. And so you're not in the long game, you're in the short game. So the long game is different than the short game. And let me throw another little aspect here. So again, back to that same scene where Neo's in the hallway checking out some doors. If you've got the luxury or the liberty of having no pressure to open that door to see what's on the other side, you can stand in front of that door all day long, all year long, all life long. So what is the impetus? What is the gasoline on the fire moment for you to open that door time and time again? But not just on your time, but on the understanding that there is no time. Those doors have to be opened as fast as possible. Those curious moments have to be solved as fast as possible. Those patterns have to be formed as fast as possible. Because if you're dogging it in front of the door, now you've got like the guy in the suit who's walking towards you, who's about to put a hand through your chest, a la the Matrix. So now you've got problems. And I like to look at life like that, not precisely that hallway scene, but I like to look at it as I need curiosity. I need a certain conviction. I need a certain pace of action because nothing is free on the stopwatch. There's always someone coming down the hallway to stop me from going through a door, to grab me by the shoulder and pull me into their sloppy ways, just like the movie. And so I think you need sort of a fuller sense of the moment, not just discipline. You also kind of need to feel the pressure of the guy walking down the hallway towards you to stop you from going through the door. Does that make sense?
This is interesting because I was watching Star Trek with my wife last night, and there's a trope in a lot of movies and a lot of TV and stuff like that, which is you have to make it from point A to point B under a fixed amount of time, right? There's no air. You got to walk from here to here and hit the button in order to get the thing. And I think it's similar to what you're talking about in the Matrix, is the fact that if you don't make it to the end, or then there's nothing else. You're just done. So if you spend your whole life walking down that hallway to get to the door, and you're 95 years old at that point in time and your life is ending, you might even get that door open at 95, and then you got nothing else to get through the door. So I think this is an interesting, the fact that time is always chasing you. And if you're not continuously curious to keep going through doors, you're going to be stuck at one for a while. Satch, you got any additional thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think necessity is the mother of invention, right? So if you find ways to create necessity in your life, then you'll figure out how to be more curious and open up those doors. But I think sometimes you have to be disciplined enough to create necessity. And if there isn't a pressure on you, you have to find a way to create it. And I think that's what's helped me over the last couple of years, because I could have very easily been, I'm not very curious anymore, man. I'm done training, I'm done running, I'm done talking to people, but I've created necessities on multiple levels so that I can continue moving in a direction that's allowing me to grow as an individual.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Now we got comments here from Salty that discipline takes having a why. And I think that's what you're talking about, that necessity. Once you know your why, it's really key. So Salty says discipline takes having a why, and best served if you have goals and decision points to create direction. If you want to know how you're doing at anything, you need data over time and external inputs from people who either don't have investments in your goals or know what it takes. And you need to take that information and adapt your path to get the results. Discipline is the gift of following it all through in action, even when you falter. Interesting point of view, Salty. I like it. And Cage jumped in here. He says necessity of heart. Key one as well. Now, I'm going to take this to a slightly different realm because I wanted to touch back on something, Shaun, you said earlier. You talked about the good idea fairy. And I want to get into this because just recently we had Gordo from All the Way, he put up a post on Instagram about guys sending him messages like, why aren't you doing this? Or why aren't you doing that? So on and so forth. I experienced a lot when I was doing the Walk for Veterans. Satch, I'm sure you've probably experienced this as well. Why aren't you running here? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Et cetera, right? And I'm wondering what your guys' thoughts are on managing the good idea fairies, because they're out there and they're constantly chirping. What do you guys think, Satch?
Yeah, man, I'm getting all kinds of ideas every single day, man. And what I started realizing, because at the beginning of this journey that I've been on, I was listening to some people, and then I might have taken some ideas and started trying to apply them. And then over time, what I've realized is all their ideas suck for me. And I have to do what I feel is necessary. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not listening to people. Like, I'll listen, but based on what their knowledge is, how can I apply it to what I'm doing? Because I have the full spectrum of understanding of what I'm trying to achieve, and they might be just seeing a sliver of what I'm trying to do. And maybe just off of social media, they might think I'm doing, one little thing, but my scope is quite massive in what I'm trying to achieve. So to listen to people who don't have a full understanding would be unwise, I think.
I like it. Almost a disservice to the larger goal to begin with. Shaun, what are you thinking?
I think that when it comes to ideas like this, as we're discussing right now, you gotta you gotta know the audience, you gotta know the room, you gotta know who's giving you the advice. And so, if I'm getting advice from someone who's 18 and has barely been in the game, okay, I'm interested. I'm interested because it's a novel idea, and perhaps it's something that I've never considered because I don't even remember when I was 18 or what I was thinking. But maybe this 18-year-old who's standing in front of me has got a cool idea, so I'm going to hear it out. But know your audience. Someone who's 60 years old and who's been in the game hard, well, they probably got more ideas that are rooted in reality through the School of Hard Knocks, through experience, through a sense of I really do know what doesn't work for most people, and I really do know what works for most people. And so I'm probably going to fit somewhere into this individual's sense of how the world spins if they're 60 years old. Whereas at 18, if I'm listening to someone, chances are they probably don't have it as dialed. And so know your audience. Now, when I say an 18-year-old and a 60-year-old, I'm not trying to exclude anyone because they're young, or I'm only including the oldies. What I'm talking about is look at the person in front of you, see what they've done in their life, and see if they're rich enough in worldly experiences rather than in the wallet, how much richness they've absorbed over the totality of their life. You can be 60 as a farmer in Saskatchewan, and you've barely been off your farm, and you know a lot about a lot of things, but you don't know a lot about the world. You might be able to transpose some of your ideas onto the overlayer of the world, but if you haven't traveled the world, you haven't really understood the world. And so whoever's standing in front of me, call it judgy, call it critically minded, but I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, what do you know based on how have you lived? And if you've never left your tiny little town and all you've ever done is read on the internet, then you don't understand the bigger world around you. You just understand your town and a bit of the internet.
I really like the term of an overlay. This got my brain flowing here, is that until we realize that our ideas have an overlay based on where we've been, what our experience is, et cetera, we can never really express those ideas well. I remember, I think it was last year, probably near the end of the year, we had some comments on the YouTube channel who was just like, man, I'm so amazed that everyone is so well spoken. But we have the experience of being online speaking for a regular basis, right? Which gives us our overlay for our ideas is that much more built out. We have more experience to draw from. We have more of a worldly view, let's say. But on the flip side of that, there's also people who are great at speaking who have never been anywhere, and that has an overlay of their ideas as well. So I'd really like this idea of overlaying our experience overlaying our ideas. Satch, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I agree with Sean. I think it's really important to know who you're speaking to, understand the person that's in front of you, and then, if they're giving you advice, trying to understand where they're coming from with that advice. And if I'm listening to someone who's trying to tell me or explain to me the best way to run across the country, well, it's a small group of people that I'll probably be listening to. It's not that many people that have that experience and wherewithal of not just training, but what's that like? What is that experience like day to day? And how do you expand a footprint or reach or awareness for various different things? Requires a specific type of person. So if I was listening to every single person's idea, I would probably not even step off. I have to be very selective as to how I take in advice or guidance or ideas and the people that are in front of me. So I think the idea fairies all over the place. We got to be selective.
Yeah, it's easy to get overloaded. If you listen to everybody, you'll never get anything done. Sean, you got any additional thoughts on this?
Just that, as Satch said, and I'm going to paraphrase now, I believe it is important that you all the time consider who's standing in front of you, delivering the advice that they're delivering, or giving opinions on things. Not only where their experiences come from, but also why they're giving you the advice. Why are they in front of you right now? Because you can have the most experienced person in the world standing in front of you about to give you advice, but I like to know internally why they're about to give me that advice. Why are they in the game with me right now in this moment? Because chances are, if they're broadly experienced and if they're a hard charger with some good advice, they could be doing other things than standing in front of me giving me advice. They could be doing better things, more impactful things. So they're giving me a slice of their life, and I like to understand why they're doing it in the moment. And sometimes I'll even ask them directly, why are you doing this? What makes you feel compelled to give me this advice right now? Or variations on that theme of that question. If I can't sort of suss it out myself internally as to why it's occurring, then I'll ask point blank or specifically, why are we doing this right now? And I think that everyone should take that opportunity from time to time to get context on why people do things, why people are motivated to give you their time or to share time with you. If you've never asked a person these kind of questions, or if you've never thought about them yourself, then what you're doing is just accepting without thought. And it's good to understand why these things are occurring so that you can refine it over the years, better understand it a decade or two later from now, and then be able to do the same for someone else, or try to describe it like I am right now. Understand the whys and wherefores of the moment.
This is really Satch. You got something? Yeah, sorry. Give me I just unmute. I got to mute you. There you go.
Yeah,
Good to
sorry,
go.
yeah, I just wanted to jump in real quickly here because I just started an idea popped into my head when we're talking about the advice or ideas that people are suggesting. And it's really important in this social media space too to consider this as well, right? Because if someone's looking at their social media or they're listening to a podcast or they're going through Instagram and someone's delving out ideas or suggestions or guidance, I think it's also important to question the people that are actually doing that on social media too. What's their motivation? Why are they doing it? What's their knowledge base? What's their experience? And don't just take what people are saying for gospel, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of people out there saying all kinds of things and without the experiences to back them up. So I think it's super important that we're critically thinking about taking information, not in just the three-dimensional space, but also in the virtual space.
Oh, I 100% agree. And I wanted to add on to this as well is not only should we be thinking about why others are giving advice, but why are we giving advice? Because if we get into a habit of just giving advice and always questioning everyone else, we got to stop and really think about, am I experienced enough to be engaging in this conversation, or should I just be listening? And without those questioning moments, we can get, I mean, that's where the good idea very comes from, right? That's where people are like, oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm just going to step in on this. And I remember a little while ago, Sean, you sent me a message just like of people saying, hey, man, Have you even shot in your life or something like that? Like, I'm a freaking sniper. Yeah, I've shot in my life. I just love it. So I got a couple comments here, and then we got another video. Unless you guys got any other thoughts. Good to go. Okay. Here we go. Vanessa jumps in here. Says, "Good day. On a Huberman episode, it was mentioned that focusing on the positive result of taking action may be motivational, but focusing on the negative outcome of not taking the action may be more motivational." I like this idea, and I'm wondering what your guys' thoughts are on it in terms of, at least the way I'm reading it, it's kind of almost better to run away from something you don't want than it is to seek the thing that you do want. Thatch, what do you think?
Can you put that back up, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just want to read that again, see if I'm understanding it correctly. On a Huberman podcast episode, mentioned that focusing on the positive result of taking action may be motivational. Motivational, okay. But focusing on negative outcome of not taking the action may be more. I don't know, man. I think taking action isn't motivational. It sets a pattern of behavior, right? So I think if you're able to take steps in a certain direction, you're actually creating a pattern to to repeat that over and over again. And if you're only worried about the negative outcome, I guess focusing on the negative outcome of not taking the action. Well, I mean, now you might be ruminating a little bit more than you need to. And so some people might spiral in that scenario. So I would just revert back to just, okay, if you think of an idea, just take action, start moving.
I like it. Sean, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I listened to that Huberman podcast when it came out. I recall him speaking on this, and I think the key word here is focusing on the positive results. So the individual's focusing on it, or more correctly, is almost like so target locked on seeking that positive result through action slash motivation that they lose sight of context, or they can't deeply reflect on what's going on in the moment, or they can't internalize the if this then that. And so just by overly focusing on the positive result, it can skew things. And I am of the opinion that perhaps in line with Huberman, or at least the research plays out, that focusing on the negative outcome and correcting against that is what works for me. I'm not a good idea fairy, and I don't chase unicorns believing that they're going to solve all my problems. And so I am a guy who maybe not obsessively focuses on the negative aspect of things, but I certainly consider the negative aspect of things to change something about that negative aspect. It's not just a matter of recognizing positive or negative thoughts. It's about doing something about it. So I don't wallow in the idea of thinking about positive and negative stuff. I get on with doing things about positive and negative stuff. So again, if you're focusing on something too much, chances are you're not actioning against that thing enough.
I like it. Interesting. Yeah, what do you got, Satch?
Yeah. So I didn't listen to that podcast, so I didn't understand the context of what was trying to be said there. Now that Sean gave his perspective, I understand a lot more. And so maybe not focusing on the negative outcomes, but understanding what the negatives could be so that it keeps you honest day in, day out in the real time, so you can start taking action so those negative things don't happen. So, I mean, comes down to action, right? And staying motivated and keep moving forward.
Yeah, still gotta actually do the work. That's not the focusing's great, but the work is the key. And then I just got a couple more here. Celtic Mick Walks jumps. How's it going, Mick? He says, "Hi guys, look forward to positive opportunities. Big karma guy myself now." And then we got on the Instagram side, Abstract Karma jumps in here, says, "Traveling can open your mind, give you a window to how others live in the world. For me, do what you are good at and know your audience. Apply yourself and do everything with passion and consistency." I love it. Now, if you guys got any other thoughts, or we can jump into this video. Good to go. Let's.
Actually, something's nagging at me from that comment. I just
What do
want
you
to get it out of my head. Do what you're good at. Also, do what you're not good at, and get better at it.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that one. Sean, you got any thoughts before we jump in?
I do. I would say that if you can only choose one, your default position should be to choose something that you think you're good at, to start reinforcing the idea that you are good at something so that you can have some self belief, so you can have some self confidence, so that you can have some self worth, for lack of a better term. So if you have to choose between tying on a white belt at something that you believe you're going to be terrible at, or do something that you're reasonably good at right now to get better at it, choose that. If you're in a phase of life where you don't have a whole pile of experiences on your belt. So I'm just saying, be cautious, I guess, that you're not too keen to jump at all of the things that you're going to be terrible at, to explore your terribleness, to see how that treats you. Because, that can wear a person down as well, where they're curiously exploring their limitations, bumping up against the ragged, hard edges of those, and, crying themselves to sleep at night every night. That can only go on for so long as well. So find a healthy balance. Every person's got a different healthy balance on this one.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. The fact that like you can wallow in failures all day long. I could do new stuff all day, every day, but it will it'll wear you down. That's for sure. All right, let's get into this video and we'll carry on this conversation. Here we go. Bam. I like it. Satch, what are you thinking?
It's cool. It doesn't really explain too much, man. It's just like really feel good, kind of do something. But I think, like anything else, there's a lot of nuance involved with going down a path, because you can't do anything worth anything entirely alone, right? So if you're trying to go down a spiritual path, at some point you're gonna have to bump into some other people and explore some other ideas and concepts. But I guess the spirit of it, I understand what's going on there. But like most things on social media, it's too brief.
There you go. What do you think, Shaun?
I think that I like the message. I also support the message that even if you don't have a team, you've got a team of one. You got to believe in yourself, and you got to go kick that ass for enough days in a row that eventually it's like 10,000 days in and you're called a Zen samurai or something like that. And so I think it's important that everyone understands the message that was just shown. And the message to me is this: if you don't have a team, you're a team of one. And every day, you're a team of one. And if for the rest of your life, you're a team of one and no one else has joined your team, as long as you're making the right decisions every day, who cares? Who cares how many are on your team? As long as you're doing the right thing for you. And that's where it all falls apart, is I think in social media anyway, the desire or the need to feel validated, or the desire to feel like you're part of something bigger than just one. You want 2, you want 10, you want 100, you want 1,000 people to like what you're doing. If you can not sell out and achieve friends along the way, then good. But what does tend to happen is, in that desire to get 1,000 new friends on social media, compromises are made. A sellout is made. A wheel comes off the bus because you're not doing it right. You're not doing it authentically to who you are. Now, all of a sudden, you're waking up in the morning, swinging a stick around, and you don't even know why, other than you want another 100 followers, because that's now become your thing. That's now become your sense of what's important. Losing sight of how you started by every day wanting to be liked for what you're doing. And so I guess my message is this: every once in a while, check in with who you are and why you're doing it, what you're doing, is who you are. Don't ever sell out that to someone else's idea of what they want you to be. That's my takeaway from that.
Interesting. When I watched it, I was looking at the concept of anything that you're doing is worth doing well, because to really half-ass anything, you're not getting the full experience, which means that you're not gaining the most out of the experience, whether it be good or bad. And there's a question here
Well,
on
it
the
is. Well, it is. You're right. That is key. But at the same time, in parallel, you can also lose your way. As you're on the path, as you're on the way, you can lose your way on the way by trying to make your way the way for everyone else. My way is my way. Your way is your way. We can walk the same way together. But if my way deviates from your way, I shouldn't want to convince you that my way is the best way. Nor should you try to convince me that your way is the best way. We'll walk together as long as we walk together. And then when we deviate, we should be mature enough, experienced enough, sensible enough, worldly enough to know that we can go our separate ways, but in the future, come back together again. And I feel that a lot of social media has lost its way because they're too busy trying to get everybody on their way. We've all got our way, man. We just got to get along.
I really like this. Satch, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's an infinite number of ways to do whatever the thing is, because there are an infinite number of personalities out there. So, like, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? I mean, if you're trying to get to a certain destination, I'm an individual, man, and I'm a certain type of thinking type of guy, and I function in a certain way. And the way I do things is most definitely not the same way someone else is going to do things. And if someone's going to hit me up and say, "Hey, man, how do you do this?" I go, "I don't know, man. How are you going to do it?" And because there's going to be a way that that individual will want to do it in the manner that I'm doing it, probably might not be the same type of appetite someone's going to want to crunch into. So I think there's an infinite number of ways, and if someone's saying this is the only way to do something, well, go the opposite direction.
Like I was talking about this morning actually on the mats, in the fact that I have students that are really small, like they're 5'1", and I have other students that are 6 foot plus. And when I tell them about a move, or we go through a certain position, and I'm like, you got to understand that there's your body composition alone is going to change how this works. Like the leverage and the base and all that stuff is all the same, but whatever, just how you use your body is going to change in that, let alone an idea. I remember reading at one point that any way you shuffle a set of cards is a new way of that layout is uh, it has never been shuffled that way before, ever, just based on the 52 variables.
I saw the odds on that just yesterday, coincidentally. It was a magician explaining the odds and the amount of zeros that go on behind that. And as it turns out, the odds on that, or the variability of that pack of cards every time you shuffle, is so unique that every shuffle is the equivalent of the amount of atoms in the galaxy for the amount of variability there. So it is a one and done every time we shuffle. But so is life. Every single second in front of us is a branching point. And every time we choose left or right, that's it. It's a one and done. There's no getting that back. The branching decision was the moment that you then move beyond, that you can't get back. And so all the atoms in the galaxy, that's just a pack of cards. Can you imagine what we're talking about for life, the path, the way, all of those branching points that we make every single day that we give away because we don't think about them? And so I think that the old Zen samurai, his 10,000 days of practice and all of that good stuff, I mean, I dig it, man. At least the guy has focus. He has a plan. He has a outcome in mind, which is more than most. And so I like his videos.
Yeah, I really like the way you put it earlier, Sean, in that fact we can walk our paths together, but they are still ours. And to both your guys' points, there are lots of people online that are trying to sell their way to other people rather than the concept of finding your own way or walking your own way with one of us, that kind of thing. And it's a thought-provoking process here. Sat, you got anything else before we move on?
No, man. I got a lot of things going through my head, but nothing worth sharing right now.
I like it. Okay, I got a couple more comments here. Celtic McWalk jumps in here. He says, challenge yourself, push yourself, do things you are not the master, and strive to be the master. Do what is not expected. But I have learned more from when I did not do my best and recognize my lost opportunity and growth from within. And this brings up a question that came up on the Instagram side here. That is, can sometimes action be taking no action? And I wanted to dig into this a little bit because I think a lot of people you hear online a lot of times of just like, go do something, you got to do something. Sometimes you got to sit back and stop and think for a little bit. Satch, what do you got?
Yeah, so this was a new technique for me. But I think for me, inaction is action. I was thinking about this as we were talking earlier, actually. I mean, I'm training and doing all kinds of things all the time. And so some days I need to not do anything and just recalibrate, down regulate, and absorb all the things that are kind of happening so I can properly reflect and then maybe push forward again the next day. So that's still action, even though I'm not physically doing a ton of things, but I'm setting myself up to do more when I don't do anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think also you're active in that, taking
Yeah.
time off. You're actioning, taking no action. I like this. John?
Yeah, like I'm sitting down
Yeah.
reflecting. Like if let's say for example, it was actually Sunday, spent pretty much 6 hours not doing a lot of things, but reflecting on a lot of things, and thinking about things and how to do things better. And while I'm doing that, I'm also recovering from the workload that I put out that last week. And then so there's multiple things happening at the same time as I'm taking inaction, which is still action.
I like it, Sean. What are you thinking?
So I don't know if I mentioned it in a post while I was over in Thailand. I know I mentioned it to Seb. We were chirping in a private conversation while I was over in Thailand. And I had some things that I'd planned on doing while I was over there that weren't getting done. And it was simply because I was too busy doing other things. And other things means this. Before I went over to Thailand, I pushed my freaking pace, man, on the bike, on the podcast, on all things. I really worked hard right up until kind of the day we were going to fly, with the intent that when we went over to Thailand, I was going to make space, make a gap in my life to see what showed up. And of course, one of those things that showed up was photography, but some other things showed up as well that if I hadn't have created a new door space, then I wouldn't have been able to walk through the new door space. And so intentionally setting yourself up for near time opportunity is important, because opportunity isn't always like the apple fell out of the tree and hit you on the head. That's called gravity. Opportunity can be created rather than just happenstance. And so I use Thailand, that 6-week block, as I'm going to create space for opportunity in this time to see what fills the space.
I really like that. I'm not going to press it too hard anywhere past that. Satch, you got any other thoughts before we? All right. Well, we're getting close to time, so I got a couple comments here, and then I'm just gonna we can get some final thoughts. Actually, I just got one. Salty Jinx says here, you shouldn't be selling away. You should be promoting and supporting ideas through action. I like that a lot. And then Celtic McWalks, great photo, Sean. Absolutely. Watching the little reels that you put up of the photos in there, that was awesome. I was loving it throughout the whole time. Any final thoughts? Anything at all on ideas, action, discipline, anything we've talked about so far? Satch, what do you got?
No, man, I don't have anything to put forth other than this was fun. It's been a hot minute since I've jumped on, so I'm still flexing the collective podcast conversation muscles. So, so I'm going to have a bunch of ideas after this, and I'll share with them at some other point.
I love it. Shaun, you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, I do, because Mick jumped on there, Celtic Mick, and mentioned, good photos and all that stuff. And I just want to call out Mick as a good representation of someone who's my age, who, we served in the same unit together back in 2 Commando. Someone who is out there doing things that not that they're unusual, or not that they're like mind-bogglingly crazy, but the Mickers has, he's thumbed his way through parts of various countries in Europe. He's planes, trains, and automobiled his way around Europe over the last year, doing things that you wouldn't consider a regular 60-year-old dude doing. He's doing things that 18-year-olds do. He's doing things that maybe I haven't done before. He's doing things that maybe he never thought that he was ever going to do, like thumbing his way or hitchhiking his way from town to town through Europe. And so I appreciate the fact that someone my age, Mick's age, can live a life that he didn't think would be the life he was going to live, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I would say even 2 years ago, Mick didn't know what he was going to be doing this year, because I've watched his evolution unfold on social media through YouTube and etc. The people that are following him and how thankful he is and how he's got better at social media. All of these little things, getting better at social media, are all part of a idea journey. His evolution is a result of his idea evolution. And I appreciate that no matter how old you are or whatever you've done in life, there's still loads of life in us.
Yeah, I really love that. That wonderful. I don't really have anything to add. That is just, I really thank you guys for the show. Sasha, really appreciate you jumping in here last minute, and we got it done. It's awesome. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. We'll see y'all next week as we all continue to learn, build, and grow. Chimo.